Around the year 1200 BC, the Mediterranean world enjoyed an era of unprecedented wealth and connectivity. Great empires dominated the known world, bound together by complex trade networks. From the palace halls of Mycenae to the golden temples of Egypt, civilization seemed indestructible. Yet, within less than 50 years, almost every single one of these great powers collapsed into dust. Cities were sacked, trade ceased, and entire languages and writing systems vanished. Humanity entered a dark age that would last for nearly 4 centuries. How could a globally connected civilization vanish so completely in a single generation? This is the story of the Late Bronze Age collapse, the ultimate mystery of the ancient world. To understand the catastrophe, we must first look at the world before the fall. In the 13th century BC, the Eastern Mediterranean was experiencing a golden age. Major powers lived in a delicate balance of diplomacy, royal marriages, and economic trade. The Hittites held Anatolia, the Mycenaeans ruled Greece, and Egypt commanded the Nile. At the heart of this global economy was a critical material, bronze. This meant no nation could survive alone. An intricate supply chain connected kingdoms separated by vast seas and deserts. Historical evidence from cuneiform tablets shows that kings addressed each other as brothers. Letters recovered from cities like Ugarit reveal urgent orders for grain, copper, and luxury goods. It was a world of hyper-specialization and mutual dependency, remarkably similar to our modern world. But this deep interconnectivity was also a dangerous vulnerability. If one major node in the trade network broke, the entire system risked chain reaction. Around 1250 BC, the first subtle cracks began to appear in the ecological foundation. Scientific evidence from tree rings and lake sediments reveals a dramatic, sudden shift in climate. A century-long megadrought descended upon the Mediterranean, causing widespread crop failures. The Hittite Empire, heavily reliant on Anatolian grain, faced devastating famines. Letters sent to Egypt pleaded for emergency grain shipments to save their people from starvation. "It is a matter of life or death," wrote one desperate Hittite ruler. As food supplies dwindled, populations migrated in search of fertile land, destabilizing entire regions. To make matters worse, geological evidence points to an unprecedented series of severe earthquakes. Between 1225 and 1175 BC, an earthquake storm struck, damaging major cities across Greece and the Levant. Palaces already struggling with drought were suddenly physically destroyed, shattering state authority. Starving, displaced, and broken, the civilized world was uniquely vulnerable. And then, out of the horizon, an even deadlier threat emerged from the sea. Egyptian records refer to them simply as the peoples of the sea. Who were these mysterious invaders? Archaeologists have debated their origins for over a century. Evidence suggests they were not a single unified nation, but a coalition of displaced maritime tribes. Driven from their homelands by environmental collapse, they traveled with their families in ox-drawn carts. They were not merely raiders. They were desperate refugees looking for land to conquer and settle. Equipped with light bronze longswords and throw javelins, their military tactics overwhelmed traditional chariot forces. Coastal cities were caught completely off guard by these sudden sea landings. One by one, the wealthy trading ports of the Levant were raided, sacked, and burned to the ground. The wealthy kingdom of Ugarit was one of the first major urban centers to fall. A last clay tablet found in the kilns of Ugarit paints a harrowing picture of its final hours. The king wrote to the ruler of Cyprus, "The enemy's ships are here. They have burned my towns and done great damage." The message was never sent. The city was destroyed before the tablet could even be baked. Modern excavations at Ugarit revealed a thick layer of ash and bronze arrowheads embedded in the walls. The city was destroyed so thoroughly that it was never inhabited ever again. Following the fall of Ugarit, the wave of destruction swept westward into Cyprus and Greece. Great Mycenaean strongholds like Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos all suffered violent disruption. But vigilance was not enough. Within months, the palace of Pylos was put to the torch. The complex administrative systems that managed Greece's wealth collapsed instantly. With the destruction of the palaces, the elite ruling class disappeared entirely. Linear B script, the written language of the Mycenaeans, was forgotten completely within a generation. The Greeks would remain illiterate for nearly 4 centuries until adopting the Phoenician alphabet. In Anatolia, the great Hittite Empire was experiencing its own death throes. Weakened by decades of famine and internal dynastic struggles, the capital Hattusa was abandoned. Invading Casca tribes and sea peoples moved in, burning the royal citadel to the ground. An empire that had rivaled Egypt for centuries vanished completely from the map. By 1177 BC, only one great empire of the Bronze Age remained standing: Egypt. Under the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses III, the Egyptian nation prepared for a battle of survival. The Sea Peoples were advancing toward the Nile Delta by both land and sea. Ramesses III mobilized every available soldier, archer, and riverboat to defend the kingdom. Inscriptions carved into the walls at Medinet Habu record the desperate battle that followed. It was a decisive, brilliant victory. Egypt had survived the tide of invasion, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. The cost of defense drained the Egyptian treasury completely. Deprived of international trade networks, Egypt entered a long, slow period of irreversible decline. The new kingdom collapsed shortly after, ending Egypt's era as a global superpower. Why did every major power fall almost simultaneously? Modern historians point to systems collapse. In a highly interconnected world, no single stress factor was responsible for the destruction. Drought, famine, earthquakes, invasions, and trade disruption acted together in a fatal feedback loop. Centralized governments collapsed, and urban populations fled into rural, mountainous areas. Monumental architecture, art, literature, and complex administration ceased completely across the region. The loss of human knowledge was staggering. Centuries of scientific and administrative progress vanished. For over 300 years, the Mediterranean existed in a quiet, isolated dark age. Yet, out of the ashes of the Bronze Age, the seeds of a new world began to take root slowly. Deprived of tin imports, metalworkers were forced to experiment with a much harder, abundant material, iron. The Bronze Age collapse gave birth to the Iron Age, unlocking new technologies for humanity. Coastal survivors like the Phoenicians developed simpler alphabetic writing systems accessible to everyone. Decentralized city-states replaced autocratic Bronze empires, paving the way for classical Greece and Rome. The Bronze Age collapse serves as a powerful historical warning for our modern world. It demonstrates that complexity, global reliance, and prosperity do not guarantee permanence. When multiple global stresses align, climate change, trade disruption, and social instability, even the greatest empires can vanish. The ancient world fell into darkness not because it was primitive, but because it was interconnected and fragile. History reminds us that civilization is a delicate balance, built anew by every generation. As the old palace economies shattered, the immediate impact on ordinary people was profound. Without centralized granaries to distribute grain during crop failures, communities were left to survive on their own. Archaeological records show a sharp decline in population density across Greece and the Levant. In the Levant, the power vacuum allowed small local kingdoms to emerge for the first time. Among these were the Israelites, the Arameans, and the Neo-Hittite city-states of northern Syria. Without regional superpowers dictating trade and tribute, local cultures began to forge distinct identities. Meanwhile, along the coast of modern-day Lebanon, the Canaanites adapted to the new maritime reality. Retaining their seafaring traditions, they evolved into the world's greatest traders, the Phoenicians. Instead of relying on palace bureaucracies, the Phoenicians established independent merchant colonies. Their most revolutionary contribution was not trade goods, but a simplified way to write. Unlike complex cuneiform or hieroglyphics requiring years of scribal training, the Phoenician alphabet had only 22 letters. Literacy was no longer restricted to the royal court. It became a tool for ordinary merchants and travelers. This democratic system of writing would later be adopted by the Greeks, Romans, and eventually the modern world. The transition from bronze to iron was another pivotal turning point brought by necessity. While bronze required rare imported tin, iron ore was widely abundant across the Mediterranean basin. Early iron weapons were softer than quality bronze, but advances in smelting techniques changed everything. By heating iron with charcoal, early smiths accidentally created the first primitive forms of steel. Iron tools made agriculture vastly more efficient, allowing farmers to clear dense forests and till hard soil. As agricultural yields recovered, populations began to grow steadily once again across Europe and Asia. By the 8th century BC, the Mediterranean was finally emerging from its centuries-long darkness. But the world that emerged was fundamentally different from the world that had fallen. Divine god-kings and centralized palace economies were replaced by independent city-states and citizen assemblies. The collapse had cleared away rigid, stagnant empires, making room for new ideas and social structures. Without the cataclysm of 1200 BC, the classical world as we know it might never have existed. For centuries, the Bronze Age collapse was treated by scholars as a simple tale of barbarian invasion. Archaeologists now view the Sea Peoples not as the primary cause of the collapse, but as a symptom. They were victims of environmental degradation themselves, driven from their homes in search of food. When these desperate migrants struck fragile, starving empires, the entire global structure buckled. This concept, known to historians as a hyperthreat, occurs when multiple crises hit simultaneously. A civilization can often withstand a drought, an earthquake, or an invasion when encountered alone. But when all these catastrophes strike at the exact same moment, systemic failure is almost inevitable. The parallels between the late Bronze Age and our modern interconnected world are striking. The story of 1177 BC reminds us that high sophistication is not a shield against systemic failure. Civilizations are not static monuments. They are dynamic, fragile living systems. When we look at the silent, sun-bleached ruins of Mycenae, Hattusa, and Ugarit, we see a mirror. The rulers of the Bronze Age believed their world would endure forever, bound by wealth and treaty. Within half a century, their palace halls were filled with ash, and their names were forgotten. Yet, human ingenuity proved far more durable than the empires that sought to control it. Out of the darkest collapse in recorded history came the innovation that shaped the modern world. The story of the Bronze Age collapse is not merely an ending, but the painful birth of a new age. A timeless testament to the resilience of humanity, surviving even when the world vanishes around us. Thank you for watching Chroniq. If you enjoyed this journey into the ancient past, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. New cinematic historical documentaries are uploaded frequently. We will see you in the next chapter of human history.